Today's episode is sponsored by Melissa Flick's Author Services. Do you write for a living and get frustrated with trying to do it all? Well, you don't have to. Melissa Flick's offers a wide range of affordable services ranging from book management to administrative tasks. Go to melissaflix.com, click contact to get started. Remember to put too many words in the subject line. Simplify your life so you have more time to write. Let's do the show. What's up, guys? I'm Jamie Bedingfield. You are listening to my podcast, Too Many Words, a place for the creative and more than slightly odd. Great to have you tune in. If you aren't a subscriber, be sure to click the subscribe little checkbox and you'll get notified when new episodes post. I have author Jamison Stone on the show. Awesome guy. I had a great time chatting with him. His book, Rune of the Apprentice, releases November 1st. I'm reading my copy right now, and I gotta say, wow. Fantasy, science fiction, adventure at its greatest, guys. You can go pre-order your copy right now, so do that. And I'll have our talk your way shortly after I ramble a bit. How is it going by you? Do you feel like you're handling stuff? Is your routine working for you? I know a large amount of you fine listeners are writers. How are your projects coming? Are you losing touch with reality based on your best efforts? Failing on not overworking? I know I am. Man, I am so distracted right now. Reality isn't sinking in. It's frustrating at times, especially when trying to run an organized household, raise 2 decent human beings, and wrangle 3 giant dogs. As we speak, Mo, the cat, you'll see pictures of him on Instagram quite a bit. He's cleaning himself right next to the microphone. So if you hear that and I don't edit it out or I'm not able to for whatever reason, I apologize. And all my mind is doing is plotting and dissecting sentences that don't flow. My mind jumping from the tortured dystopian world that has me convinced our world is headed the same way to magical high fantasy battles and nature-based spells. I love it, honestly. I'm always talking to you guys about how I work, the way goldfish eat. That is mostly because I love it so much. I love it so much. And partly because it's just hard to take a break from dream chasing. It's hard to convince myself that I've done enough for the day. I'm always wanting more. Lately, the amount of pressure on time frames is new. It's intense and it's new, and I'm busting my ass trying to meet all these dates. And I'm in love with how much I'm pushing myself. I really am. It's exciting, and I feel closer to where I want to be. I am in a different phase, and it's awesome. I clocked 22,799 words in just the dystopian last week, and that's really good for me. I'm not really sure that I've done that before because I'm not even including the other things that I worked on. So I'm pretty jazzed. Sure, I'm barely eating and sleeping, but things are clicking in a way that they haven't before. And I guess I'm in the mood to be more intense than funny, guys. You're listening to an intense show, but that just, it fits my tone of the week, my mood, my happenings. I'm wound tight. Yes, I'm aware that it's because of how much I'm working and how obsessed with that I am and how I can't shut my mind off. And I also think it goes deeper. That, I don't really know what I mean by that, but I know it's true. That was ominous. What can I say, guys? I'm in a weird place. And I kind of like it. Anytime I'm nearing the end of a draft and get the overwhelming urge to rearrange my office furniture, And that's happening right now. So I'm thinking of a plan, and I'm going to move everything around as I feel all excited and frantic. You guys ever get restless while writing? Like this need to do something in the physical world? I don't know. Some of you have been asking me what music I listen to. You can follow me on Spotify and see what I'm listening to and check out playlists I've made for my different moods. I'm currently listening to the Powerful playlist that I made while writing Powerland. And you can check me out over there and listen to the songs I'm listening to. Jamie Bedingfield, I'm easy to find. Even with my writing, within my writing, I'm struggling with breaking from my fiction world, my work. I have tons of articles I need to get out and another column for site, and I knock down doors to get, and it will all come. I'm just trying not to stress and lean into what feels right. That reminds me to mention that you can read my newest piece in my column in the Matters of Kindness on Feminine Collective. I gave her the fall. I touch on grief and how it grows over time, and the season will always belong to my friend. She's been on my mind so much lately, but I noticed that the pain with the memories, it's transformed to more of a comfort. So I talk about that, and you can read that on Feminine Collective. Lately, I've been thinking a lot about characters, people, what motivates them, what qualities turn to what actions. As much as crowds and the rudeness of the general public gets to me, I love people watching. The spectacle of humanity, it fascinates me. And with all the character work that I'm knee deep in right now, it's really heightening that, and especially when where the dystopian is concerned. People are scary, intense predators, and it's so often forgotten that we're animals, imperfect, primal creatures. And I once had 5 cats, and all pretty chill by themselves. But when all of them went in the same room, they transformed. A bookshelf ledge was worth a brawl. And when I see people hustling around each other with various passing frustrations, I think of that, a room of cats. Now, our natural instincts are so clouded by modern day constraints and expectations, fear of exclusion. The easier it gets to share your thoughts, the more dangerous it becomes. Our fear of saying the wrong thing gets smoothed out in, planned appearances. It's unsettling. And I've got on quite a ramble, it seems, and thinking about people and what makes them happen and how I can take certain qualities and make characters that you'll never forget. But I believe it's time we get to our awesome guest. And after these tunes, I'll be talking to author Jamison Stone. Hey, Jamison, welcome to the show.
Thanks so much. It's a pleasure to be here.
How's it going?
I'm doing very, very well. Yeah, it's a beautiful day outside, and happy to be talking to you and sharing some passion about writing and fantasy science fiction. So couldn't be more pleased.
Very cool. Is it still behaving like summer wherever you are? Are you in?
I'm in Maryland, and we're kind of, it's like that awkward setting between summer and early fall, where it's kind of cool sometimes, and then other times a little too warm, and then a little too rainy. But today's the sun's out, so that's a good thing.
Nice. Yeah, similar over here in Seattle, actually. It's been feeling more like fall, but there's still summer lingering.
I totally feel you. Seattle's a wonderful area. I was just out there for a video game convention. It's called the Internationals for Dota 2, and I was reminded how wonderful your all's environment is out there. It's really beautiful.
Oh yeah, I love it out here. I'm originally from New Jersey, and I've been out here for about almost 11 years now, and yeah, I love it.
It's cool. I grew up in Massachusetts, so not too far from New Jersey, so I know the area well.
Okay, yeah, I had actually a lot of family of mine lived in Massachusetts.
It's a big state.
Yes, it is.
It
is. Boston's a fun city, though. I've always been a fan. I always preferred it over New York.
It's really funny the difference between Boston and New York, and New York is obviously is a bit larger, but they're still very New England. So if you compare it to like Seattle or San Francisco, there's a very strong difference there. But if you just isolate Boston, New York itself, it is actually amazing how different they are, and they're really not that far apart either. It was always very interesting growing up.
Yeah, same here. And the part of New Jersey that I lived in, I was very, very, very close to New York. I mean, closer in distance than the actual time it took there because traffic is ridiculous. But I always preferred Boston. Just had like way more soul to it. I felt like you actually like New York always felt like to me like it was just gonna kind of like swallow you up.
It's New York is so overwhelming and so large, and for Manhattan, obviously, so packed and onto the island. It really was overwhelming. I remember the first time I went to New York City as a kid, and I grew up right outside of Boston, so I went to Boston a lot, and I was very familiar with it. The first time I was on Manhattan, we were walking around, and I just was like, I almost like got like palpably nauseous just because of how overwhelming it was for me.
Oh,
It was really a bizarre experience.
And I went there. I mean, I went into Manhattan a lot. It was very regular for me to go in there, and yeah, but it always felt like that to me. Like it was just, and driving was
that's
just
a whole other nightmare.
awful. Oh my gosh, yeah.
Although I will say, driving in Boston is pretty bad too.
It is pretty terrible.
But that's a whole different nightmare. Yeah.
Yeah, driving around cities in general. I mean, like where I live right now. I mean, it can take me 10 minutes to get into downtown, but if I hit the freeway at the wrong time, it can take 2 hours.
It's pretty wild. It's actually funny. So speaking of large cities, so I lived in Tokyo, Japan for about a year.
Oh, wow.
And that city. So it's funny if we were to compare, Boston, New York, and then, compared to like San Francisco or Seattle, there's differences. If you take Tokyo, Japan, and compare that to another city, it is so wildly different. Now, I luckily didn't ever have to drive in Tokyo, although I was in cars and did a lot more of public transit. But it is amazing how many people are there on the subways, on the streets. It's a whole different world. It's amazing.
I bet. I've never been, but it's definitely. I'm drawn to different parts of Asia for that reason, just to see like the difference. It seems pretty incredible.
It's wild. It's just like there's an ocean of. I mean, if you think of like Times Square, there are like 7 Times Squares in Tokyo. How they have this thing called the Yamanote line. It's like where the city is at the center is kind of the old. What do they call it? Not the capital, but it's basically where the emperor lived. I think it's called the Imperial Palace, and there's a large circle, a train circle that goes around it, as though they're like hubs on that wheel are different train stations, and they have like a Times Square for each of them. So it's really interesting.
Oh wow!
Yeah. There's a lot of people there, and they're all very different. Each one of those little hubs is very, very unique. So there's a lot of different stuff you can see there.
Well, I love watching like Anthony Bourdain, and I always wanted. I always want to just like go to those places and just eat a ton of awesome food.
Yeah, it's so funny. My wife and I watched that show. We love that show, and we always we were like, what do we have to do to like go like carry his bags or like be a sound guy or something to go be on that show and hang out with him? Yeah,
right. I mean, and talk about like a cool gig that he carved out for himself. I mean,
yeah, he's a little lucky. He's a smart guy.
Yeah,
he is. He's a smart guy.
Exactly. Yeah, I know. I always like to take note. It's like, yeah, that's a good gig you got there.
One of the ones. Oh no, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, speaking of good gigs, writing, I consider that you have a new release in November, the Runes of the Apprentice.
Yeah. We're really excited about it. Being published by Inkshares November 1st. Rune of the Apprentice. It's available for pre-order on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and any local bookstore, actually, throughout the country and Canada. And I think you can get it at some other locations internationally. But
wow,
we're really excited about it.
Yeah, you must be. That's, forthcoming release day. Like, that's That's
It's coming up.
yeah,
I feel it. I feel it. It's coming up. Yeah, it's. I'll be honest. It's amazing having something that you've been working on for so long, and it's taken me, gosh, probably a total of over 5 years to do this novel. I was a professional writer and editor and ghostwriter before Rune, before this work.
Okay.
But this was the passion project that I worked on in my free time while I was working on other people's projects. So this novel is kind of the culmination of all of the things that I really enjoy. So fantasy, science fiction, and sword fighting, and pirates, and sea ships, and naval battles, and there's even a little, spaceships and stuff in there. It's a really interesting world, so I don't want to ruin anything, but
it sounds
it's fun.
awesome. It's right up my alley. I love, take me to a different world. I have real life in real life, but it's yeah. So you must. It seems like it was super fun to write. And I read the first chapter or the first little bit there that's on the site, and I right away I was just like, I can tell that he's having fun while writing this. Like it comes through.
I grew up playing video games, doing RPGs and LARPing and Dungeons and Dragons and Vampire the Masquerade and Shadowrun and all that stuff, and also doing a lot of martial arts, and now I'm a part-time martial arts instructor.
Oh, are you?
So, yeah.
That's cool.
Tai Chi, Taekwondo, Shaolin Kempo, Aikido, Iaido, Aikiken, Aikijo. There's a lot.
That's awesome. My daughter is she just tested into an orange belt with Taekwondo, and she's just super loving it. Sorry, go on.
No. I'm just excited. That's really cool. I love Taekwondo. Taekwondo is an amazing martial art.
It's giving her so much confidence, and the recess and the world that kids live in. It's a crazy place. So, like, for her to just feel more powerful, yeah, it is. Kids can be so mean. So it's like just her knowing that she can like break a board, and she got best kicker on her last test, and it's like,
oh wow,
yeah.
So without getting like too dark or too real, I went to boarding school, and the reason that I started training in martial arts was actually for self-defense. Boarding school is, depending on the school and the location, can be kind of a rough place, and I was getting hazed really badly it was junior high, and so out of self-preservation, needed to learn how to defend myself, and started learning Tai Chi and Taekwondo, and it worked. So I think that it's a martial arts when done with a strong ethical framework. So whenever you have a powerful tool, you need to know when to use and when not to use that tool. But you have that strong foundation. I think that martial arts are a really amazing way to build up the individual so they can have greater confidence and also learn discipline and all those other things.
And respect, yeah.
It's a huge piece of it, no doubt.
Definitely. No, it's really cool. It's been fun to see the transformation there.
That's really cool. And so tying it back to Rune the Apprentice, all of the martial arts and the sword play and all those other things, they're actual martial arts techniques that one might use. The main character does a combination of Aikido and Iaido. They don't use those terms in the book because, again, this is a fantasy setting. But each technique that you will see and read in the book, they are actual techniques vetted by martial artists.
That's awesome.
And my teachers are much better than I am. We had an advanced copy sent out to one of my teachers, and I was very nervous to hear what he thought, but he liked the book a lot, so that bodes well for the martial aspect of Rune the Apprentice.
Well, that's the thing too, that like you spend all this time, writing the book, getting it together, and having all the putting all the pieces together, all the hard work. And then it comes to sharing it with other people. And that's often just a trip all itself.
It's terrifying.
It is.
I mean, it's just there's no other word for it. It is just terrifying. Yeah.
It's like, I find myself, writing this fine line of being like, here, read it. And then like somebody will be like, oh, I got your book. Or, I read your latest article. And I instantly want to apologize. Be like, I'm sorry.
It's so funny, yeah, that the apologetic attitude, which I have as well, and also just the sense for me of, I mean, when you promote your own work, and I go to a lot of conventions to promote Rune, and so you're quite literally selling someone something that you hope they like, but you don't know. Um, it's such an odd place. I have some members of my family who are salesmen, like that's what they do for their job, and some of them they don't. I don't think they care whether or not the other person on the other end of the conversation likes or has any value or need for what they're selling them. But for me, when I go to these conventions and I sell Rune the Apprentice, I mean, I feel it's my responsibility to then not only write a good book, but have them actually enjoy it, have them get their money's worth.
Yeah.
I don't know. I take
No,
it very seriously.
no, totally, totally. I get that completely. Um, well, and because I mean, it all comes from a personal place. I mean, because it's like you spend all this time with in these worlds with these people, it becomes personal, and then it's time to take that, you know, personal relationship and make it business, and
Right.
it's quite a jump. And
Yeah.
I have a sister-in-law, and she's marketing is in her blood. She does it for a job. She's natural at it. And I definitely am not. Like, writing stories I get, but as far as like getting the word out there, that's something completely different to me.
It's so hard. I've had luck going to conventions like Comic Con and Balticon and a whole bunch of others where it's really more focused on science fiction fantasy. And I dress up in cosplay and I run around like a crazy person with a glowing sword and glowing armor and all the rest. But it's really amazing, and particularly with the book coming out in November, and then all of these people getting their pre-orders and all of their reviews going public and being posted online. Um, yeah, it's really interesting. I mean, honestly, it is terrifying. I believe in the story. The publishing house believes in the story, and all of my beta readers and my extended community, they all love it too. But it just, it's scary.
Yeah, no, definitely. It's definitely that like roller coaster moment, like right before you go over the top, the clink clink.
Yeah, yeah. You hope that the tracks are, don't just stop or fling you off into the horizon.
So, and you're being published through Inkshares. Does that mean that had to do like the campaigning before that?
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah.
So Inkshares is a really interesting company. They are now shifting more into traditional marketing, a traditional marketing space and publishing space. But I did a full on campaign, and for me the number was 1,000. So I had to sell 1,000
Wow.
pre-orders of Bruno the Apprentice. Yeah, I mean it's a huge number. And I think that they've now dropped that number down to 750
Yeah, that's
for the
what
full
we have in the
publishing.
contest.
Right, right. Yeah, and it's just it's really interesting. I really like their idea of democratizing the publishing space and having the barrier to publication, the barrier to entry, no longer be an acquisition editor, but instead being a fan base and have the actual readers vote for the books that they want to read and they want to see out in the world. Um, but the flip side of that is it puts so much effort onto the author to be able to market themselves well and to get out there and to just quite literally sell their book before
Yeah.
it's a book, before it's
Yeah.
a thing.
No, I'm yeah, that part of it for me it's difficult to figure out kind of even just how to do it.
It's hard. It's really hard. For me, I found that going to conventions was really helpful. And there's a difference between going to conventions with a booth and without a booth. And I've kind of found a way to do both. But also not being super pushy about it. And so I always like to start off my conversations when I talk to people about asking about what they like to read, or if they're into anime, what they like to watch, if they're into movies, what they like to watch, and then trying to see if Rune is a good fit for them. Because as epic fantasy and science fiction, not everybody likes that. Like that's not everyone's cup of tea. So
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, it's all about not just letting people know, but letting the right people know, the people that would actually be interested in it.
right, and that comes back to that kind of that marketing salesman kind of attitude that we were talking about before. And I think some people, they just don't, they'll sell insurance to anybody. They're not worried about it. But for me, it's, again, as you were saying, I take it very personally, and I love these characters dearly, and I want them to go into good hands.
Yeah.
Someone who will appreciate them.
No, totally. Well, and I mean, it also, as far as like, if, because for me, when my first superhero fiction novel came out, one of my reviews was from somebody who really liked romance novels, and it's superhero gritty fiction, and no, she's not going to like it.
Right.
Violence instead of romance. So.
And it's so hard, particularly with these very like niche genres. You either like it or you don't. And if that's not your genre, then you really shouldn't be reviewing the book, in my opinion. I don't know why you'd be there.
I agree. Well, and that's it too, is like, reading the reviews and deciding like, how you're going to take it and stuff. And I know in the beginning I really struggled with that because I took it all to heart, but tough skin, it does grow.
I think it either you potentially have it there already, or it grows out of necessity.
Yeah.
I think there's no other way to survive.
Yeah, no, definitely not. Yeah. So at what point in the process of the book did you decide to go the Inkshares route?
Right. Yeah. So it's a great question. So I actually had a New York publisher for Rune of The Apprentice a while ago. Gosh, it was probably like 3 years ago now.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and so we were shopping it around. He unfortunately had some pretty serious health problems, and so we unfortunately were no longer able to go that route. And I was kind of left with the decision of, I can either self-publish, I can, try to get another agent and see how that works. And going through the query process for agents is just it's a nightmare in and of itself. And although I did have some pretty good responses from not just the agent that I signed with, but a couple others, the thought of going through that process again it had already killed a very large percentage of my passion for the publishing industry already. So I was like, I'm going to try something else.
It's such a slug. I'm there right now. Yeah, it's a long emotional process. Or
it's
emotionalist,
hard,
depending on, the blanketness of the responses. But, I find that
right.
I do, like, I take it much, like, rejections now. It's like, okay, it wasn't a fit, move on. Or, it was close, but it didn't quite work out, move on. I'm getting better. I feel like I'm getting into a groove with it. But yeah, no, it's a thing for sure.
It's really hard. And I think that, like we were saying, with reviewers being in a specific, niche, I think that, agents are the same way, and publishing houses are the same way. Inkshares is a little bit differently because they are able to source editors from many different locations and genres. So they are more of a blanket, all publishing, publishing environment. But the traditional route is it's too bottlenecked in my mind. So I think that you need to have very strong barriers of entry. So you don't have, just a kind of opening the floodgates and letting way too many books that probably shouldn't be published yet. I mean, maybe they can be published down the road with a little bit more work, but letting those come through. But right now, it's way too selective for the traditional model. I think that's where Inkshares can really come in and jumpstart some new authors, and we've seen that happening already. There's a lot on Inkshares that are really taking off, and it's beautiful to watch, honestly.
Well, it's really awesome, and I find that part about Inkshares really attractive too. Is it takes away this agent gatekeeper, and it's like, hey, readers, it's like it's a direct pipeline to readers and supporters, and it's cool to. I like the concept, even though it's hard. I like the concept of spreading the word, kind of during the campaign long before it's published because it's, I mean, I think I read an article one time that it takes the average person 8 times to hear something before just deciding
to buy it. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. And it used to be 3, I think 10, 15, 20 years ago for marketing, and now it's 8, probably even more. I'm sure it goes up every couple months.
Oh, well, I mean, yeah. I mean, the information age we live in, everything is coming at people, and it's crazy. Crazy
We're
out there.
inundated.
Yes.
Stimulation overload. I look at my younger brothers who are full-blooded millennials. I would consider myself maybe a half C on millennials, half Generation X or Y, and then half millennial.
I consider myself the same. Yeah.
Right. I remember what it was like before the internet and before everyone had a cell phone. Where I have younger brothers who have no conceptual framework for what the world would look like under those criteria, and I see them approaching our world so much different.
It is. Well, and I have 2 kids that are 7 and 8, and I mean it's crazy because like we hadn't had cable forever because we were just doing the Netflix Hulu thing and we were fine with it. Football season comes around, we're like, hey, let's get cable, and my kids are complaining because you can't watch whatever you want to.
Like, right. Yeah. Right.
They're like,
and
this is
and commercials. Yeah. Right.
And commercials. Yeah. They're like, I don't understand why you got worse television.
Right. Oh, well, I have to agree with your kid. They're totally right because normal television is horrible. My wife and I, we only watch either Netflix or Amazon Prime, or I wait and get things on Blu-ray. I have no patience. I don't know. Maybe I'm more of a millennial than I care to admit.
Well, no, for the most part, I agree with you. There's certain shows, though, that I do not have the patience to wait.
Right.
I have to watch it. And that means, like, I will take the commercials on because I just can't even wait the extra hour for it to show up on demand. Like, I need, like Walking Dead. I am there in the seat 5 minutes before it starts. No exceptions.
No, I totally feel you. Game of I totally feel you.
Oh, Game of Thrones. So I was a way late adapter with the whole thing. I hadn't read the books. And then the show comes out and I'm hearing about the show. And I don't know. I'm just being stubborn. I'm like, yeah. And I love high fantasy. So like the fact that I wasn't enjoying it was crazy. So at the beginning of the summer, I decided to watch all 6 seasons. Most incredible binge watching experience ever.
That's intense. Yeah, all 6 seasons in a several month span.
Yeah,
that is intense.
It was, and like, and now I'm reading the books. But oh wow, amazing.
Yeah, I love it. I really enjoy it. It's funny. So when I read the first book, and this was a long time ago. So Game of Thrones, the first one, when it was actually called Game of Thrones and Song of Ice and Fire.
Yeah, that's what I'm reading right now.
Right. Yeah. I really enjoyed it. And the moment, so it probably isn't spoilers. You've obviously, you know the story from reading it, but there were a couple moments in the book, particularly when Khal Drogo died. And I was actually on a boat. I was on a semester at sea, which is, so Rune of the Apprentices, there's a lot of naval action on it, on this pirate ship. And I was actually, on this boat on a semester at sea, and I was so angry that this character died because I didn't want him to die. And then obviously, his son, died in utero, which is like it was just so unfair to me. I remember taking my book and throwing it into the ocean. I was just so upset, which then meant that I had to go buy another copy when I got on to land.
That's too funny.
And I was like, I really shouldn't have thrown that book. Like, that's just a waste of a book. That's such a silly move. But I was so invested in the characters, and particularly, the writer who would mount the world. I just thought that was such a cool idea, and the way that it all came about. I don't know, George R. R. Martin, I think, is a really interesting guy. I met him at Balticon.
Did you?
I was in full-on cosplay. He pulled me out of a crowd, and we just chatted for a few moments, and I got a picture of him. It was actually right next to my booth.
Oh, how cool.
He's so nice, and the way that he interacts with his fans, he's a really, really interesting guy.
He would have to be. I mean, the world that he built.
One would think. Yeah, one would think. It's so interesting to peer behind the veil and see these people.
Totally. It is. And I saw I believe I saw that you were at Dragon Con.
I was at Dragon Con.
I was jealous.
Amazing. Yeah,
of everyone at Dragon Con. I had the whole con season this year was just, I spent it envious because I didn't go to any, but yeah.
Have you been? That was my first Dragon Con. Have you been to a Dragon Con before?
No, I haven't, but I've just been kind of in tune with all that. So I was, the whole lineup and the panels that Richard Kadri did, I really wanted to go to.
Oh yeah, there's a lot of cool ones. It's interesting for people. So when I talk to a lot of like Dragon Con goers, they're like, "Oh, this is my like 17th season." I'm a total newbie because that was my first one, and I've gone to a lot of other conventions, but just for whatever reason, not ever Dragon Con before. Dragon Con is this insane like costume party that doesn't stop.
See, that's what it seems like. It seems like just a crazy, fun,
that's it.
Intense place.
It was the most intense convention I'd ever been to. I mean, it was part like in the evenings. It was almost part like drunken frat party Halloween costume experience with like comic themed. It was really interesting. I was
sounds like my sophomore year.
Yeah, I was like, God, like this is almost like being in college again. And I don't drink really anymore that often. And I was there with my 17-year-old brother, so I like really wasn't drinking that trip because he's obviously underage, and I was trying to be a good role model to him. But we were walking around, and it's so funny. We'd see like Iron Man that's like been done a mashup with like Venom, for example, and it's also not just a mashup, but also a crossplay. So it's a woman, so it's like a woman Venom Iron Man mashup, and she's like like really drunk too, and doing this crazy techno dance party, and it's like no place else in the world would you see that.
That's awesome. That's funny. So my husband and I, we drove out here across country, and the first weekend we were ever in Seattle, because I always knew I wanted to come out here, but I had never been before we moved here. So it was our first weekend, and we're driving through downtown, and everywhere there's people dressed like anime characters.
That's awesome.
And it was an anime convention, and we ended up walking through it, but it was funny for that to be the first weekend because it's like, what's going on? It took us a second.
Right. Yeah, I love cosplaying, and so like when I was in Seattle, for example, I was at as I said, a Dota 2 convention, which is a video game, and with a really dedicated fan base. And I was dressed up as one of the characters. His name is Anti-Mage, and he has a very it's not super large mohawk, but it's a mohawk. And so I dyed my hair blue, and I gave myself a mohawk, and he also is a shirtless character, and so I was shirtless, and I had all this body paint, like fake tattoos on me, and had these huge weapons, and I'm just walking down the streets of Seattle, and it's amazing. Like when you're in the convention scene, everyone's all like, "Oh, Anti-Mage, that's so cool! You're awesome! Wow, so great!" But when you're like walking down the street and like passing like a pizza parlor, people are like, "Who is that guy?"
Yeah,
like,
totally.
What is he doing? Like, I don't know. So it's always funny. I always look forward to those awkward like walking from your hotel to the event space moments.
Totally. I had picked up a friend of mine from the ferry because she lives kind of across the water, and we were going to like a medieval dinner together, and I picked her up, and she was at the ferry, and she was wearing like this long emerald gown, and it was funny because people were looking like, "Where are you two doing?"
Yeah, where are you guys going? Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's cool.
I'm excited for my Halloween costume this year. I'm normally a person that waits until the last moment lately, especially with kids. I make sure their stuff's all squared away. But this year I'm going to be Link, and I'm very excited about it. Partly is, it's kind of half done for me because I have short, pokey, blonde hair. Right. So it's like I just put a little bit more wax in that, wear something, that's cool. I'll be warm. So that's a plus.
I have so much respect for the cross-players. So people who are I don't know if your listeners necessarily know that terminology, but
yes.
males or females who are cosplaying someone of the opposite gender. Honestly, I think that's so cool. I have so much respect for people who are willing to just dismantle these like really horrible stereotypes that we have around, you know, gender okay and all that stuff, all these ideas that we have. And so I love seeing people doing crossplay, and then also, you know, mashups, and, you know, having, you know, I love it. So that's awesome. I am excited to see your link.
Yeah, well, it's funny you should say that because a few years ago when my daughter was in kindergarten, for Halloween, and they have like, you know, Halloween parties at school and stuff, and the parents, you know, typically dress up, and I was Iron Man.
Nice.
And
awesome.
she was like, you can't be Iron Man. You know, it was a good opportunity because she's like, you can't be Iron Man. You know, you're a girl. And I was just like, but it's Halloween. But it's just like, you can be anything you want to be. And I want to be Iron Man. And she was like, oh, that's cool. Like, yeah.
Right. And I was having a conversation with a good friend of mine. He's also a you know, super geek like myself, and he's a black guy. And he's like, you know, and he's a cosplayer. He's like, you know, man, like we've only got like 5 people we can cosplay as, like, as, you know, within the black community. If we're gonna just like be, you know, be someone who was depicted as black. So he's like, I cosplay, you know, whoever I want, and he was like, no apologies about it. I'm like, dude, that's awesome. And so we actually had a conversation. It was like, so when Rune the Apprentice, you know, is mega successful, I was like, well, I hope we'll see if that happens. So he's like, you know, do you have people that I can cosplay without, you know, and actually have it be, you know, a black character? I was like, dude, absolutely. And so I'm so excited. Hopefully, I don't know, we've sold the audiobook rights, so they will be making an audiobook, but I don't think anyone will be cosplaying anything from Rune the Apprentice until maybe someday they make a movie. But if they do, there will be plenty of cosplay material for all genders, races, everything. I'm really excited about it.
Well, I mean, that's so important. And that's something that in entertainment and media, it has come a long way from what it once was, is that there's more books and shows and representations of just the real world, basically. Right. But
you mean there are other sexual orientations than just you know the standard? You mean there are other skin colors other than white? What are you talking about?
Exactly. Well, and you know, and then you know there's it has come a long way, but it still has a long way to go. So I'm always happy to hear, you know, new stuff coming out that, you know, is helping the world move in the right direction.
It gives me a lot of hope, and I think that, you know, people say oftentimes that anytime there's like really, really fast change in a community or any environment, the change isn't necessarily long-lived because there's regression. But when you have that slow, steady progression towards, you know, hopefully a better outcome, that change is sustainable. And so when I look at it's not as mainstream yet as I'd like, but when I look at, I was just at Annapolis Comic Con and talked to my wife about this. You know, when you look at the community at whether it's Annapolis Comic Con or any Comic Con, it's not about like the racial divide. There isn't the thing. It's people there sharing in passion, whether it's for fantasy, science fiction, comic books, whatever it is, and they're just there celebrating. You know, that community and communal love for a specific thing in a series of things. And so I think that as our hopefully as our society and community starts to embrace more of that togetherness and emphasizes what we all love and share in passion, that, you know, we can slowly move the needle on a lot of those larger topics. But I don't know. What do I know? I'm just a fantasy writer.
No, I think you're onto something. I agree. So I was watching an interview of you. I'm forgetting the name of the channel, the site temporarily, but you mentioned that Rune of the Apprentice is being shopped around in Movie Land.
Oh yeah. Was that for the Annapolis Comic Con? For Reaper Legion?
Yes.
Yeah. So that was a really fun little interview, and I think we're going to do a follow up. But yeah, Reaper Legion is cool, and they have some awesome music, by the way. But yes, so it is being shopped around. The manuscript is in Hollywood, apparently, so I'm told, being read by the Hollywood execs. You know, for me, when I think of the project, so we have sold the audiobook rights. to Audible. So people will be, and I just recently got off the phone with the voice actor who's going to be doing all the recording for the book. Amazing guy. He's over 200 audiobooks
Oh,
and
wow.
been featured. Yeah, the guy's just a powerhouse. And he's a relatively young guy too. He's just amazing work ethic. He's also done voiceovers for a couple of video games. He was in Red Dead Revolver, or no, either Red Dead Revolver or Red Dead Redemption. I don't remember which one. I played both and enjoyed them both a lot. That's
Yes.
by Rockstar Games. But so we have that coming out. So people can get the audiobook come release date. I believe it'll be available in November along with the hardcover. But in how I view this, the whole like potential of a movie, the vast majority of book to movie ports that I've seen usually happens a couple novels deep. So right now we've got Rune of the Apprentice, and that's out. And I'm working on the sequel, and I actually feel pretty good with the progress, and that's called Oath of the Apprentice.
Nice.
But yeah, so I'm really excited about it, but I don't, I mean, who knows? Maybe I can be pleasantly surprised, but I don't see a studio picking up this book and turning it into a movie until there's a couple novels down the line. And I think that there's honestly some good reasoning for that. If you look at, as we were talking, A Song of Ice and Fire, or as it's more commonly known via HBO, Game of Thrones, they're having a little bit of a release date issue with the book's not being done yet.
Yeah, they are.
And so, in my opinion, this is not George R.R. Martin's fault. It takes as long as it takes to write one of these books, and some people take a little bit longer than others. If you take Patrick Rothfuss, and his series is called the Kingkiller Trilogy.
Oh, I love those books so much.
One of my personal favorites. Pat's an amazing guy. Has done such amazing work for the community, and he's just a freaking awesome writer. But
it takes a while.
Yeah, right. It takes a while. One of the critiques the community has is that his books, you wait for them, and they are worth the wait. They are fabulous, but they take a little bit to come out. Now, granted, when he does release a book, it's incredible. In a lot of ways, I mean, I don't know. I read the first one. It was life changing for me. I don't just say that. It really, really, really was amazing.
I remember holding it, and I was in Barnes & Noble, and I was reading the first few pages right there, and I was just like, yeah, this is coming home with me.
Yeah, exactly. They're just that good. And so I think it takes a long time. And it took me a while to do Rune. I think I've learned a lot along the way. Particularly, I did a lot of nonfiction writing before this, and a lot of nonfiction editing and ghostwriting. And so, having this be my first fiction novel, there are a lot of things that I look forward to to doing differently and to doing better in my second novel, which I'm very excited about. But yeah, as far as a movie goes, it is the dream. However, right now I'm just focused on having Oath of the Apprentice be the best that it can be, the sequel.
Totally. That is the trick to realize your dreams, but also be able to turn off the noise and just focus. I have better luck with that on some days than others.
But it's hard, particularly, I don't know. There's a lot of pressure on authors, particularly with the internet, where anything is at your fingertips. Back in the day, I think about Hemingway, for example, when he was writing. I mean, you just kind of put yourself in, or even better, Henry David Thoreau, right? So as I said, I grew up, outside of Boston. I grew up in Concord.
Oh wow.
Yeah, and so that's they have Walden Pond, which is where Henry David Thoreau spent his time. He was in a cabin on the on right next to the pond.
I think about that all the time.
Yeah, so there's no internet, no cell phones. I mean, they didn't have anything. They could maybe have gotten a carrier pigeon to him, although I don't think he would have done much with it. Maybe eaten it because he was out there so long.
Yeah, but, some barbecue.
Right. Yeah. Right. Yeah. Some chicken wings. But, we're inundated. I think a lot about this, as well on the flip side of that. Right. So there's a lot of distractions. When I was writing Rune of the Apprentice, and as I said, there's a huge naval aspect to it. A big chunk of the book is on a boat. It's a 3-masted barkentine schooner. It's a really beautiful ship called the Elusive Diamond. So it had been
awesome.
Probably. Yeah, I think it's awesome because I love naval stuff. But I had to do a lot of research to really make sure everything was done right. And I had spent a considerable amount of time living on a three-masted ship, so I had my personal experience. But when you write about something, you really need to get it right. And
Yeah.
so, I went and went back to some other ships here, in the area when I was writing it. But I also had this, the internet. The internet can tell you really just about anything if you know how to ask it, the right way. But a lot of those other writers, they didn't have that resource. So it's a double-edged sword. Sure.
That's an interesting perspective that I've never put those two things together. Like, yes, they had quiet, because I often think of Walden Pond and writing by candlelight and all that stuff. But also, you're right. I mean, right now I'm working on a dystopian, which takes, there's a fair amount of knowledge of how there's certain things work so that they can be destroyed properly. So like,
Right.
I spend a lot of time just researching it, and but that would be a whole different experience. I mean, that would be like a journey of sorts.
Well, and I think you'd be spending a lot of time, I don't know, it may not be wasted. I was going to say wasted time, but, maybe not. But a lot of time that you wouldn't have necessarily initially wanted to put into sorting through other information to get to the information that you want. So you'd have to go to a library and read read an entire encyclopedia trying to get to the one piece of knowledge that you were looking for. Now, granted, you would learn all that other stuff too, but I mean, I don't know if that would be necessarily helpful in the long run. Maybe it is. Maybe it's not. I don't know.
Yeah. No, that is a good point. Yeah, the actual time. Because, it's a little different than, this click,
Boom. Instant. Yeah. Wikipedia is amazing.
Oh, I love it. I was just on it this morning for quite some time.
You can learn so much. I remember, I guess I was in grade school, junior high, and I wanted to cite Wikipedia for a project. And I remember my somewhat elderly teacher being like, "It's on the internet. It's not trusted. It's no one will ever allow." And So first she said, "No, you can't do it." And I said, "Well, in the future, someday I'm gonna be able to do this." She said, "No one will ever trust the internet and will ever think that it's a credible source of information." And I just remember in my head thinking, like, "Lady, hurry up and die." I don't know. It's horrible to say, but
yeah.
I was right.
Well, I remember that too. Like when it first started coming into the school, and you could actually I had to make like a travel itinerary, and I was in the library looking up hotel information, and that was like a big deal because it's like something that the class before us didn't get to do or something.
Right.
Yeah, I think we're of similar age.
It's so funny. I don't know it. As far as the Walden, the Walden Pond isolation aspect, there are days where I have to turn my phone off and physically turn off my internet. So I'll if I'm on a laptop, I'll turn off the Wi-Fi. If I'm on my desktop, I'll unplug the router, the cable, and then I'm just there, And what I like to do is then open up a picture of the map of the world of Terra, and I'm like, you know what? I'm not in this world right now. I'm just in Terra. I'm in the world of Luna the Apprentice, and that for me is helpful. Now then, I usually inevitably will have a question that I need to ask the internet about some little thing, and so I'll run to my other computer and quickly look it up and try not to get distracted. But such is the writing woes of the modern age.
Well, what I've been doing recently is I've been drafting everything first on paper because I've just been so distracted, otherwise. And then when I'll make notes if I need to look something up, and then when I'm actually inputting it into the document, I go and look those things up. That's
I think Neil Gaiman does something very similar, actually.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
I must not be totally crazy.
No, not at all. I think you're in good company. If Neil Gaiman's doing it, you're doing something right. He's an amazing writer.
Oh, I'm very familiar. Yeah. He's pretty awesome.
He's one of my favorites. But yeah, I think he actually puts himself in relative isolation, cabin in the woods type deal, and he sometimes takes pictures of it and then will post it later on his blog. I've seen a couple cool pictures. The cabins are pretty small usually, but he'll draft it all out. Is my understanding. I feel bad misquoting him, but I think I read this on his blog, so I'm pretty sure it's accurate. We'll draft it all out in a notebook, and then he goes and transcribes it later.
That's what.
Yeah, so I can't do that. I'm horribly dyslexic, so I wouldn't even be able to read whatever I write. I need need to type it out, otherwise it's just a mess. But I don't know if Neil Gaiman's doing it.
All right then.
Got that going for you.
Yeah,
Right?
I like it.
I try to take those little wins whenever I can get them.
Oh yeah, me too. But not only do I take them, but I also like I keep them in a little box in case I need to pull them out. It's like, okay, today's been dreadfully awful, so let's give me some wins.
100%.
But it's funny that way. I mean, there's days where you're just, the writing is on, it feels great. You're like, oh, I'm on top of the world. You get a positive email or two, or and then the very next day, sometimes that night, it's just like,
it's so hard. It's so hard. And, then you have to, in my experience, not bring those emotional highs and lows into the writing itself, which can be a real challenge.
It can.
There are particularly within Bruna the Apprentice, there's some dream sequences. They're not even dream. There are some dream sequences, but there's some sequences where the characters are in this place called the dreamscape, and it's like, I don't know. Imagine like a dream meets the Matrix meets like, I don't know, like some like crazy like Escher-esque, I don't know, it's just kind of crazy, like what dreams may come style, like painting. So
nice.
Yeah, it's this like really far out place, but I had to like really make sure that there was continuity of feeling there, regardless of kind of like the turmoil happening in my real life. So I'll physically select a series of songs, usually non-vocal and usually electronica or something else that have kind of like a emotive resonance with that place or the type of emotion I'm trying to convey in the writing. And so that one was a tricky one. I had one song in particular that I would just play on repeat. Probably listen to it like many hundreds of times, but it really helped me not like be able to switch back into the gears of like, okay, I'm writing this scene and I'm making it happen. When you finish the rest of the book, you'll know where it is. It's
I
between
can't
the
wait.
Yeah, Alexei and Saya in the dreamscape. You'd be like, oh, cool, this is what he's talking about. But
I'm so excited to hear that you do that with music too. I thought I was the only one because I actually always ask people, like, do you listen to music while you write? And sometimes it's a no, or sometimes it's like stuff in the background. But I actually I have certain songs that like they'll just put me in a certain mood and I'm there. Right. I'm at that scene. And I listen to them over and over again. And my poor family is like, if I'm not writing, but I want to be like plotting in my head while I'm doing something else, I'll play the song over and over again.
Right.
Yeah.
I'm 100% the same way. Yeah. So I usually don't listen to music unless I'm trying to evoke a certain emotion. And I have a very large playlist meticulously organized into different folders of different like emotive qualities to invoke.
So do I.
Yeah. So that's how I do it.
Yeah. Yeah, I have also I make playlists on Spotify and I'll label them like, powerful or lost or feeling scenes.
I mean, I even have like for example, like naval battle or like marching soldiers or things like to try and kind of pull like duty bound. There's a scene where we're in room where I have a general kind of talking about him needing to make certain sacrifices for his nation, and I really want to get the feeling of that right. And I'm not a general. My wife is active duty military, but I just kind of see military life vicariously through her, and and through the friends that we have who are in the service. But I'm not a general. I don't know what that person is like. However, through pulling that emotive quality through music and other things, I think that we really can put ourselves in that place, which is really cool.
Totally, yeah. No, I'm with you there. When I was working on the Blockets, which are little magical creatures, and the Shadow Bears, which is what I have in the Inkshares contest, I was listening to a lot of Japanese flute music. And that was just helping me with like the magical vibe of it all.
That's so cool. And it's is it the shakuhachi? Is that the flute?
Yeah.
You may not. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's beautiful. The shakuhachi is amazing. So unique.
Oh, and it's enchanting. Like I instantly feel like I'm surrounded by pixies. It's amazing.
It's so cool. It is so cool. Yeah, the shakuhachi is a really beautiful, beautiful instrument. I also really enjoy Native American flute, and they're very, very different sounds. I mean, they're both wooden flutes, although the shakuhachi is made of bamboo, but that's still wood.
Yeah.
But the sounds and their kind of like resonance are very, very distinct.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it has like this lingering quality.
Yeah, almost eerie and unsettling in its beauty.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
totally. Well,
yeah.
Jamison, it was so great talking to you. I had a lot of fun.
Yeah, absolutely.
It was great. Could you tell everybody where they can find you and info about your book and all that cool stuff?
Absolutely. So, Rune of the Apprentice, you can pre-order it right now on Amazon.com. Although you can get it and pre-order it at any bookstore. So if you have a favorite local bookstore, whether it's a university bookstore, mom and pop bookstore down the street, or even some of the medium-sized chains, they'll have it. So Rune of the Apprentice, published by Inkshares, and if you're of the audiobook variety, there's going to be an audiobook version too.
Awesome. And Twitter?
Oh yeah, sure. So Twitter, it's at Stone Jamison, and then my Instagram is at stone.jamison, and obviously it's a podcast, so I don't know if you guys are into the whole Instagram thing, but as a cosplayer, I put a lot of really cool costume stuff on my Instagram page. So
yeah, Instagram for sure.
Yeah, so check out the Instagram and Facebook, and I have a website. It's www.stonejamison.com, and I don't spell my name like the Irish whiskey. Jamison.
This was awesome, and everybody be sure to follow him on Twitter, pick up his book, and reach out. Let him know what you think.
Sounds great. And I look forward to learning more about the Shadow Bearers and eventually getting my copy.
Yeah, awesome. Well, thanks so much, Jamison.
Absolutely.
Well, that wraps this up for today. Be sure to check out Rune of the Apprentice. There has been talk of Jamison coming back after I read it, so be sure to pick up your copy. Of course, you can follow me on Twitter at @MeBettingfield and the show at Too Many Words Pod. Follow the Facebook page, which is also Too Many Words Pod. Read my column on FeminineCollective.com. Magic Unveiled is the forthcoming magical realism anthology that A Story of Mine is included in, and it is available right now for pre-order on Amazon, and it will release to the world October 13th. For everything else, you can go to my site, jamiebenningfield.com. Thanks for listening. I'll talk to you next week.